Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday, or as I say to my kids, happy Friday every Friday, right? We celebrate. It's Friday. We made it to this day. Welcome to this edition of Balance in Life, where we are going to continue a really important conversation that we started last week around secondary trauma and caring for ourselves as we are caring for other people in our world, be it at home, in our professional lives, and our volunteer work in spaces. And so, acknowledging the importance of that conversation, we are picking up a little bit where we left off last week. And we are happy to welcome Jennifer Hilliard with us this week, along with her colleague Ginger Daughter, who started that conversation with us last week. So on behalf of the Virginia Cooperative Extension Human Development Program team and our partners in this work, North Carolina Cooperative Extension, we welcome you to this session. A couple of quick tidbits. Those of us who are on and you've been on before, we are a pretty active group in the chat box. So as you have questions, thoughts, comments, please feel free to engage those in the chat box. This is a Zoom webinar platform, so you will only see and hear those of us who are panelists, but everyone else can freely engage in the chat box. But if you put your response in the chat box and do nothing, it will only be seen by those of us who are panelists. If you want all of the attendees, and there were 200 plus of you registered for this session, if you want all the other attendees to see your good comment or question, you'll have to choose that in the drop-down menu. Having said that, I am going to welcome you and welcome Jennifer and quickly move out of the way so she can jump into this content. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thanks, Crystal. And I heard y'all had a great time last Friday. I'm excited to be doing the second part of this and appreciate you all coming back again. So what we're going to do today is we're going to very quickly do a recap of what Ginger shared with you yesterday, which is a definition of what trauma stewardship is and how that can appear when we aren't good stewards of our trauma. So please don't get agitated while I flip quick slides, but I definitely want to be able to get to the second part, which is what I love. So the first two that Ginger covered was what is trauma stewardship? Then she talked about what are common responses to trauma exposure when you're not kind of being good stewards of the trauma you experience. And when we talk about trauma, we're talking about secondary or vicarious trauma, not first person childhood trauma. And so today I'm going to take you home. We're going to talk about how do we create this change and that it happens not outside of us, but completely inside of us, and how to make your plan to be a better steward of your own trauma, your plan that works for you. So that's what we're going to do today. And we talked about the definition that Lipsky gives in her book. It's a daily practice. That's what I wanted to just drive home. And I know Ginger did too. A daily practice of taking care of the trauma we experience through our jobs. And I'm aware of some of the jobs that you hold. And I know that this is an issue for you. And hopefully some of you may have some good tips for the rest of us. We need to be fully present when we're doing this. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I did want to say we have to be at the fundamental understanding that we're not sitting around waiting for things to change, like more funding or different personnel. We're not waiting for those to change in order to take charge of our own ways to deal with trauma. So going through that. And we talked about the trauma exposure responses that organizations and society definitely impact us, but more of our personal stories, our own personal history with trauma, and who we are as people, how we deal with things. Do we have good boundaries, soft boundaries? Do we flex too much or not flex enough? That will impact how you respond to trauma. Just common trauma exposure responses and the guilt. So Ginger brought me up to date and told me that there was a good discussion about guilt, that it's really hard. And I almost feel validated because that's what jumped out at me from this book was guilt, because that's my trauma exposure response that I like to go to. And that there were some really great comments, like turning your guilt into gratitude. It's kind of like maybe the second face of a coin, guilt and gratitude. And so there was some question, I believe, about how to do this. What are some skills to do that? And we're going to talk about trauma stewardship in general, but when you're stuck, that was brought up. How do you start this? How do you stop feeling guilty and start feeling grateful, interchanging that with being grateful when you're stuck? And so I just wanted to share some stuff with you that I kind of looked around or have heard about or I'm aware of. And some of them you will know. Some of them, maybe one or two will pop out and you'll think, I'm going to do this. Some of you might hear all of them say nothing jumps out at me. I would encourage you to at least pick one and try. So we know about gratefulness journals. They have journals you can buy that are already shaped and geared around being grateful, a gratitude journal, or you can just simply write about it. Making a plan to send daily messages to your friends what you're grateful about. Maybe meditation. I read this, I didn't know this, if there's something that you're grateful for, find an object that represents that. If you're a meditator, find an object that represents the thing that you're grateful for and hold it in your hand while you're meditating and have that meditation be around that, what that represents to you. At the dinner table, this is something that we did that my husband brought into the household, which is we would sit around and say one thing that we were grateful for from that day, or maybe would change it up. One thing you were grateful for about the person on your right. So there's lots of ways to integrate that. The last thing I'm going to be talking to you about before we really get into it is there's some apps that you may have heard about, and Bethany's going to drop a link to an article, I believe it's from Psychology Today, about some popular apps. One is called Happify. I have no experience. I can't tell you whether they're good or not good, but I was trying to appeal to the techie people and then those, that like to meditate, or both. But in anything, you have to start. I would say that if you're stuck, you have to start being present in the moment, as hard as that can sometimes be, and recognizing the thoughts that are running through your head. And when they are guilt-ridden, to stop and try to change them, and remind yourself, we're not going to go into guilt. We're going to think of things that we're grateful for. So with that, I'm going to jump off into my starting point, which is, okay, what do we do now? So we know what trauma stewardship is. We know some common responses, and hopefully if you're struggling with trauma, you may have even recognized a few that you exhibit. I know that I did. So now what do we do about it? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about the decisions. The first thing is to open the inquiry. Ginger, did you get through open the inquiry? I didn't see a slide with their names on. I want to make sure that I don't repeat.
I did not.
Okay, just making sure. So the first thing Lipsky says when she talks about opening the inquiry, and that will come up again in the presentation, is you have to be open to hearing the thoughts that are running through your brain. And you have to be open to asking yourself tough questions like the ones you see on the screen. But most importantly, you have to be available to hear the answers, even if you're uncomfortable with them. These are some pretty important questions. Thinking about patterns in your life that have made you who you are there consistent themes? Is what you're doing in your work satisfying to you? I was in a pretty poor marriage for a long time, and so work became my life. I used it to escape what was going on in my home life. Is that something that's going on? Does your work bring you joy? And if it doesn't, that's not to say turn in your resignation and move on. That's to say we need to do something different because you obviously took on this role. The things that you all do, the employment, the jobs that you have are a calling. So how do we get back to when it did bring you joy? So a guy named Bessel van der Kolk, I hope I'm saying that right. You've probably read some of his stuff. He's a very prolific researcher, and he did a lot of research with folks who had firsthand trauma. If you're familiar with the ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences technique, and they talk with their therapist and talk about the different types of trauma that they may have experienced as a child, and there's a rating scale. But anyway, he did a lot of research on the folks that had pretty high ACE scores and had experienced a significant amount of childhood trauma. And he wanted to know, what are the commonalities between these folks who have experienced just as much trauma as this group has, and where this group, is just not doing well, not succeeding in life, in personal relationships, financially, and so on. What has this group got going on over here that helps them be successful in life that this group is missing? So these are the 4 things he found. And Lipsky spends a great deal of time in her book talking about getting back to these, making sure that you take the steps to see that you're achieving these strategies. A sense of personal control. We talked about persecution being a way that some people deal with poor trauma stewardship. That was my personal one. Everybody's out to get these kids. And if nobody, I worked in the school system, if just this would happen, they don't like this school because it's a tough school, and so they won't fund it. And that's where I spun a lot of my time. I had given away the fact that I controlled how I interacted with my kids and where I put my energy. So thinking about, do you feel like you have influence over your life truly? The fact that they were in pursuit of meaningful activities, that could be your job, but maybe it's not. Maybe a meaningful activity, especially in COVID times, might be something different, learning a new craft, whatever it is, but that was a common theme. Healthy lifestyle choices, the fact that they ate healthy, they had good exercise habits, and they knew how to relax. And we'll get to that again later. That's going to pop up. And that they had great social support relationships with others. So in general, before we delve into the format that she uses on how to be better stewards of our trauma, be patient. It's daily. I can't say that enough. It is an everyday occurrence that you continue to revisit in whatever way you decide from the rest of this presentation that you do so. Some things that be present, and you heard Ginger probably talk a lot about that, and I will continue to do so. And here are just some ways to be present. These are not the only ones, but some people don't like meditation. We have a coworker that likes the movement. They don't like the meditation, but they like the movement exercises. That helps them recenter and be present. Even simple breathing exercise. If you're a prayer warrior, if you're good at daily prayer, then you've probably got a leg up on other people about how to be present in the moment. And be still. And yoga is also another way that people do that. This is not to say you need to choose one of those, but these are great ways to know that you are being present. It's hard not to be present when you're doing a lot of those. So she uses a format with the 4 cardinal directions and a 5th in the middle that we'll get to. And it's just her framework. You can look at it any way that you want, but I'm going to use that when we go through that. And she uses each direction kind of to describe the world with instructions of how we can use that direction in our life to make us healthier. And it's a process, again, daily process. So when she talks about north, she's talking about going back and creating that space for inquiry, of being gracious to yourself. How many times when and we're probably maybe a little bit better at this than the layperson, since maybe a lot of you work in mental health and you've studied how integral your thoughts are to how you feel and how you behave. So it is so important to spend time thinking. I mean, it just is. And maybe you do that. You've already done that you know that when you get in the car, you turn the radio off and you think when you're by yourself, or maybe in the morning when you wake up. But there needs to be an openness to be still and be with your thoughts, and to ask yourself some pretty difficult questions and be gracious when you hear the answers, and not be so self-critical. So questions like, why am I doing what I'm doing? That could be professionally, that could be personally. And it's not an accusatory why. This is the explanation why. Why do you do what you do? When I was at a local high school here in Chesterfield County, we took pictures of all of the faculty and staff, and we asked them, what is their why? And you've probably heard people talk about their why. What is the reason that you come into this work? Because it was a tough high school, lots of trauma, and they were just feeling pretty beat down. So we dug and dug deep, and we wanted to get to the root of things and reconnect our faculty and staff with why they came to that high school. So make sure that you are asking yourself that question. Why do you do the work that you do? Is this work still important to me? Is it meaningful to me? And you need to be genuinely accepting of whatever answer. Every day, you need to remind yourself of your why. And that's why I love those posters. So we did the poster with the picture and the why underneath of it, the person's why, and we hung them up outside of the classrooms and offices and whatever. And I remember I just loved it because I'd go in, turn my key to get ready for the day, and there was me, and there was my why. And it's like a direction. It just kind of, it kind of went from personal, coming in, thinking about groceries, thinking about kids, thinking about everything else, to, okay, now I'm present and in this space, and this is why I'm here. If you can't easily articulate your why, don't be upset, but know that you need to take a significant amount of time and do that. Why you do what you do, and you need to write it down. And then if you feel comfortable, you can consult with another person to just bounce it off of them, not for them to criticize you, but sometimes when we speak it, it makes it more real to us. And that's something that Lipsky encourages. So if you do nothing about trauma stewardship, but one thing, do this, write down your why today. That will start a good thinking process, a good thing to sit and gel with and just see where your thoughts take you with that. The second direction she talks about is east, and that's choosing where we spend our focus. You know, I talked about how I spent a lot of time up in my head. I mean, I wasn't saying these things out loud, but I was spending time wishing that everything would change. Why don't we have funding for an interpreter? These kids need one, these families need, and so on and so on. I was choosing to put my focus on things that I couldn't change. And so I was less able to do my job at the level that I wanted to than I would have been if I'd taken the time. Sure, we're going to be upset about stuff, but when it becomes your response to external stimuli, it takes away from what you're doing. My why, I wanted to make a positive change in young people's lives. I just did. And that I wasn't being true, I wasn't being genuine, and I was stuck. And this quote I put on there, I focus on what I was able to do, what went well, what changed, what moved, what I was able to do, and the rest I leave behind. And that, when I read that, I kind of got a little mad because I wasn't good at that. How many of us go home and we're still thinking about what we're doing, and we're still worrying about that client, and we're still wondering where so-and-so, for me, are they going to have food tonight? Is dad going to hit them tonight? And I was worrying about it, which, you understand why, but I couldn't do anything about it. So while I was worrying about it, guess where I wasn't being present? With my family. And that will take a toll. And then that guilt, we talked about guilt from not being present with your family, feeds into it. You have got to stop and be where you are in the moment. We'll talk a little bit more as we go on. So as part of this, you need to know who your resources are. In education, we had a smile file where we put notes and letters and pictures that students or parents had written us. And when we got down and wondered about our why are we still doing this, we pulled it out. If you guys have other ideas, stick them in the chat box. We'd love to hear from it. Again, pay attention.
Excuse me, we have 10 minutes left.
Woo, I'm going to run. Pay attention to the commentary in your brain, listen to yourself, and then develop a plan B. If you didn't do this work, what would you do? Sometimes it's nice to know that we have choices. Not that you're going to run off and do plan B, but you have choices, and it kind of reaffirms that plan A is the plan that you still choose. South is building community. It's my favorite because you identify your Sangha. And those of you who know some Buddhist terms know that Sangha is your chosen community. So who are the people that will call you out on your BS, that will laugh with you, cry with you, listen to you? Who are your people? Write them down. Let them know. I love the term Sangha. I've told my people that they're part of my Sangha. They think I'm crazy anyway because we laugh about everything. But I'll tell you what, if I get off track and I'm not doing stuff that's genuine for me, they will call me out on it. Let me know in the chat box if you've got folks like that. Think about your family. And in that way, she talked about, think about the things that your family may have overcome. This might not apply to everybody, but think about that. Consider also your environment. I'm sitting in my kitchen. It is not the right environment for me. I'm going to do some things this weekend to make that change because I need that. I need to, it's bringing me down. It's taking me away from being present because I get distracted and focused on the kitchen. So thinking about finding balance, this kind of leads into finding balance. How can you change your work environment? And it's not just physical, like I spoke about, but it could be, somebody in the book said that she made the choice to, when the phone rang, you're so used to the phone rings, grab it, right? Phone rings, grab it, right? So she said, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths before I answer the phone every time. And that's what she started doing. And she said it just completely recentered her so that when that phone, she wasn't still writing something down while she answered that phone. How many times are we doing that? She was in that moment. She was ready to rock and roll, made her a better worker, made her feel better. Finding balance. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because there's other things I want to get to. I'm going to skip the whole brain work stuff, but don't be a sponge. Think about trauma. You know, you're like the sponge, and trauma is that water that's all around you. It comes at you, maybe even every day. And sometimes if you're not working through that, and by that I mean you're faced with secondary trauma, maybe a client sitting right in front of you, and they are telling you things that is just, it's hurting you. It should hurt you. You're a human being. In that moment, if you're truly present, you are going to be hurt. You're not ripping off that Band-Aid and going somewhere else in your brain. If you're good, you're staying right there. You finish up with that client and try to make some time after that, 5 minutes, 3 minutes. You can get really good at this, of just sitting and thinking about what you've heard, what you've experienced, what you can do and will do, and what you're not going to do. And always what you're not going to do is you're not going to then take that on internally. So just, it's all about having those internal conversations and getting into those habits. You can reframe stuff radically. You probably know all about that, how to take, sometimes you can't, but a lot of times you can. What are the things that you've learned from this difficult situation? Maybe you learn how to help another client in a different way, whatever. Move your energy. Just refocus, get up and move if you need to between clients, between what you're doing. And we talked a little bit about gratitude last time, didn't we? So this, and let me know when I have 2 minutes, if you would, Miss Ginger. I loved this. I want to know in the chat box, how many of you have ever gone on vacation and had somebody say, why did you bring your laptop? Or maybe they said, do you really need to check your email every day? Or maybe they said, can't you just relax? So I'm seeing the chat box. I can't see the chat box, but I can see it flashing. I'm pretty sure I've never had people not say yes. I'm pretty sure you are. And so this quote, it wasn't that the quote was mind-blowing. It was who wrote it. When Leonardo da Vinci in Renaissance times is writing that not only do you need to go away on vacation, you need to go far. And of course, we're in a COVID world, and maybe finances prevent us from doing that. But he's not big on staycations, I can tell you that. And then the work appears smaller. Your judgment is better because you've given your brain, if you are being present, and your body time to relax. Find your most awakened self by being present. And if you don't know what that is, email me. Create an intention for your day. You can use that why. Today, I'm going to make a positive difference in at least one person's life today. That's what I would say to myself. And begin to cultivate those moments of mindness. 3 deep breaths before you answer the phone or between clients or however that works into you. We know we have to learn a new behavior. We know. Because then you add what you do and COVID-19 on top of it. Can you imagine the stress that we're dealing with and we probably don't even realize it? We have to open ourselves up to suffering in the moment, but we also have to open ourselves up to being hopeful. And we must be present. And just a couple of quotes. I'm going to probably skip through these, read Jack Cornfield's. When we possess other people's suffering in an unhealthy way, we're caught. You know, somebody talked about being stuck and we're not free. I think about a fish in a net. You're not free and you're not at peace and you're going nowhere. We have to be gracious to ourselves and do the things that will help us be real wherever we are. This is, if you go to www.traumastewardship.com, and if somebody wants to put that in the chat box, you can find a lot of this stuff. She's got a new book out called Overwhelm. I have ordered it because I really think she makes sense. And look on there and see if there's something on there that speaks to you that you could try. I love that bottom left. That's my favorite. Metabolize all you're experiencing, because I love to eat. I struggle with that still because I just love to cook and I love to eat. And so I'm always thinking about metabolizing and stuff. So what you're putting in, I mean, makes sense. Emotionally, has got to come out, and it does. It's either going to come out in the ways that Ginger presented last week, or it's going to come out in the correct way that allows you to be present in every part of your life. And there we are. If you have any questions, and I do need to end with this, which is, this is truly a 3-hour presentation that we have flown through. And I told Crystal and Bethany, one of the two of y'all, that I felt bad because I'm speaking so I'm going to be speaking so fast, it might raise their anxiety levels when they're trying to learn ways to de-stress. My apologies, but we felt the information was so important that we needed to get it to you in any way possible. So please know that that is not usually the way that we present this material. And with that, Miss Crystal, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And because we had this conversation about how long the session was, and we know many of you posted last week that, you know, we needed more time, and we said, sure, we're coming back next week to do another section, but we wanted to have this to offer to you as well, to you and to others that you think would benefit from this conversation, this work. When we get back in January, we are going to offer on January the 8th a deeper dive into this work. And so it's going to be a 2-hour, won't be a 3-hour because it's not a face-to-face, and 3-hour on Zoom is a little tough, but we are going to have an opportunity for a 2-hour session to go deeper and really spend a little bit more time going in depth with Jennifer and Ginger on this work. And so it's there. And I'm going to post right in the chat. I'll send it out with the slide deck and the recording from this session and last week's session as well. But I did just post in the chat the registration link if you'd like to go ahead and register for that session. It's there. So we do have that opportunity to go deeper and not just leave it at where we are right now. So avail yourself of that and all the recording links as usual. And so I also want to say, many of you have been on before when we've had our good friend and presenter, Alan Rasmussen, who's mental health prevention specialist. He's the one who talks with us about our communication and managing difficult relationships and times. He's going to be on with us next Friday to talk about, how, we're going into this long holiday season and doing things differently and engaging with our families in different ways. So he's going to have some good things to share with us, to take with us and hold on to during that time. So next week, same time, same place, I'll send out that recording link. So look forward to those two next week with Alan Rasmussen. When we come back in January, we'll have our short 30-minute session at 10, but later that afternoon, we'll have the deeper dive going further into trauma stewardship. Having said that, Jennifer gave us our call to action earlier. So we're going to take that call, Jennifer. You told us that one thing that we're going to do. Do you want to repeat it for us? If we do nothing else?
If you do nothing else, right after this, if you can, write down your why. And if you don't know your why, don't feel bad. That's an invitation for you to have a nice conversation with yourself.
Great.
Crystal, you're muted.
I wrote it in the chat. Thank you. Sorry about that. I wrote it in the chat when you said it, and I wanted to hear it from your words directly again. So that's our call between now and when we come back. Make sure you spend some time figuring out the why as part of taking care of ourselves, and being present and taking care of ourselves is critically important, because if we don't do that, pretty soon we won't have anything else to share with those that we're trying to support. So thank you, Jennifer and Ginger, for this conversation again. Thanks, Bethany and Herman, for being on. And thanks to all of you. Have a fantastic rest of your Friday and weekend, and we will see you next Friday, same time, same place. Look for the recording link and registration and slide deck. See you soon, all. Bye.
All right, bye.